Greetings and salutations, dear viewers. Get ready for some fantastic content. Thank you for joining us today as we dive into Viktor Nikitin pilot. Viktor Nikitin, Russian, Viktor Mikhailovich Nikitin, May 2, 1893, Lozanoki near Kiev, Russian Empire, September 12, 1933, Ljubljana, Yugoslavia, was a Russian and Serbian pilot, killed in the first disaster of Yugoslav civil aviation. Nikitin was a pilot and one of the three top pilots in the first Yugoslav airline company Airport. He died in a plane crash, plane Airport Type Farman called Podgorica license plate YUSAH he piloted. The accident happened on the regular flight Ljubljana-Susak on Tuesday 12 September 1933 at 6:21 a.m., shortly after the takeoff from Ljubljana Airport. As we enter this new phase, let's uncover the impact of biography on our broader topic. Born on May 2, 1893, Lozanoki, Kiev, Russian Empire, to father Mihail and mother Henriette, who was of Polish ancestry. Viktor was the third of 5 sons: Eugene, Vladimir, Viktor, Nicholas and Alexander, and 4 daughters: Anna, Olga, Sophia and Lydia. After graduating from Kiev Gymnasium in 1914, he enters Elisabethgrad Cavalry Academy, and in 1915 he joins the aviation as a volunteer and is sent to the Sevastopol Military Aviation School Katya, where he becomes a military pilot. It is in Katya that he first befriends Vladimir Stryzewski, future colleague in the first Yugoslav civil aviation company Airport, established in Belgrade in 1927. In the upcoming section, we'll be shining a light on World War I, around the same time when he received a diploma of an international pilot. In June 1916, Viktor Nikitin was sent to the unit at the front, which was part of the 12 Corps Aviation Department. Very quickly, he mastered the skills to pilot, and the same year he moved to single-seat fighter planes. During the war, he got slightly wounded once, but had no other accidents. As a lieutenant in 1917, he was an appointed commander of the aviation detachment of 7th Division throughout the war, and as the opponents he had German and Austro-Hungarian pilots. After signing of the Brest Peace Treaty, Viktor Nikitin is in units of General Denikin until its collapse. After, his unit joined General Wrangel. Throughout the war and revolution, Viktor had 606 hours of combat flights. Soon after the graduation, he married Vera Mihajlovna Demenjev, with which 30 September 1917 had a son, Yuri George. Settled in Kiev, where the family lived until the arrival of the Bolsheviks and then evacuated to Odessa. Let's transition to emigration to Yugoslavia and uncover its significance. Soon after Western intervention failed, the entire Nikitin family went into exile from Odessa across the Crimea, Simferopol and Sevastopol in Varna, where they temporarily resided. To survive, the male members of the family had to do the hardest physical labor without any prospects that the future will be better. As a white Russian, exiles were slowly leaving to the Western European countries. Nikitin family, at the invitation of King of SHS Yugoslavia Alexander, boarded a ship and via Constantinople and Gallipoli in 1921 was moved to Yugoslavia. First residency of Nikitin family was in Novi Sad, probably because at that time Novi Sad was the aviation center of the new state. Later they moved to Zman, where they found conditions favorable for permanent residence. In Zman, Viktor builds a luxury 4-level house which was finished 3 months before his death. Get ready for a captivating exploration as we unravel the layers of military aviation kingdom of SHS Yugoslavia and their profound significance. Upon his arrival in Novi Sad 1921, he started working as a laborer at the airport. At that time, the Yugoslav military aviation experts were required of all professions and profiles. As Viktor was highly qualified, he started working as an aviation mechanic at the Novi Sad airport. After a few years, he moved to SIDN, a Franco-Romanian airline, and worked as an airline mechanic. He was trying to restart his position as a pilot and finally succeeded. He was hired as a pilot and a flight instructor in military aviation. His reputation and obvious knowledge were his best recommendation. Viktor Nikitin was an officer in the Yugoslav Royal Air Force JKRV, and later when he worked in airport. Next to all of his obligations, he continued training junior pilots, flying practice, and has maintained the warplanes until the end of his life. In the upcoming section, we'll be dissecting airport and exploring its implications in greater detail. This company has engaged the first pilots Viktor Nikitin, Vladimir Straevsky, and Mikhail Yaroenko. It was for them, the law of professional flight, and the plane becomes something more. There were a lot of temptations in a relatively fragile aircraft, with no navigation, complex weather conditions, and other difficulties, but flights were an adventure for Viktor Nikitin. While working at airport, Nikitin made 466 hours of flight time. He was a complete pilot who knew the plane he was flying. As we enter this new phase, let's navigate the complexities of aeroclub and discover its practical applications. As a skilled pilot and a lover of blue heights, Nikitin gladly responded to calls for flying Aero Club, who at the time worked intensively to popularize aviation. At public events, he piloted aircraft type de Havilland, performing cool moves in the air. As we enter this new phase, let's analyze accidents from different angles and evaluate its significance. During his career, Nikitin had only 3 incidents: 1. Wounded in a combat flight on the Eastern Front; 2. Emergency landing on unsuitable terrain when they ran out of fuel coming back from the international competition of military teams; 3. Emergency landing of passenger aircraft Move 29 on a regular route Belgrade-Zagreb near the village Popovaja near Slavenski Brod due to overheating engines. All 3 have passed without victims. During his pilot experience, there was no plane in the sky that he didn't fly as a fighter pilot and flight instructor, Icarus test pilot, a member of the Aero Club pilot or airport pilot. Get ready for an exciting exploration as we unravel the mysteries of death. Crash of the airport passenger plane type Farman called Podgorica, license plate YUSAH, occurred at a regular route Ljubljana-Susak on Tuesday, 12 September 1933 at 6:21 a.m., shortly after plane took off from the airport in Ljubljana. Weather conditions at the airport that morning were fine. The plane has been scheduled to take off at IM, but with the engines on, it waited on the tarmac for a passenger that was late. Plane took off with a 9-minute delay at IM. Immediately after takeoff, the plane crashed in the woods with a tremendous crash, only 1 kilometer from the airport, hitting a drop in the stone wall of the hospital at the well. There were 8 persons on the flight, 2 crew members and 6 passengers. All persons on board were killed outright. The flight crew consisted of a pilot, Viktor Nikitin, and a mechanic, Spirochkalia. This was the first plane crash of airport, which occurred 6 years since the founding of the airline. A member of the Command Air Force formed to investigate the causes of the plane crash, Mr. Janovic said, as quoted by the Politicus 16 September 1933, "Material is not to blame. Departing was performed after a regular review and under normal circumstances. Guilt may be up to fog and its uneven formation on the upper surface, or a fatal error in pilotage, as one cannot believe, knowing the extraordinary abilities of Nikitin as a good, serious and conscientious pilot." Pilot Viktor Nikitin was buried at the Orthodox Cemetery Izman, September 15, 1933, with all the honors that belonged to him as a respectable citizen, soldier, pilot and man. At the accident site, there is an evidence that slabs of the time and the names of people missing in the disaster. As we enter this new phase, let's navigate the complexities of family and discover its practical applications. Yuri George was the only son after the death of his father. He graduated from high school in Izman and then the 64th class of the Military Academy in Belgrade 1939, then served in the artillery. After the collapse of the Yugoslav Royal Army in the April War Access Units World War II, and after the war, he served in the JNA armored units as well as active duty officer. After the war, George had 2 sons, of whom the elder Alexander headed his grandfather's footsteps. He became a Jet pilot who continued the tradition of a pre-war airport which flew his grandfather Victor. For the 50-year anniversary of the first flight of Aeroport on the Belgrade-Zagreb route, plane piloted by Viktor Nikitin, this has symbolically marked the anniversary. Today, Nikitin family photo albums are kept at the Serbian National Aviation Museum next to the Nikola Tesla Airport in Belgrade. Kakari Russian World War I pilots, Kakari victims of aviation accidents or incidents in Yugoslavia, Kakari deaths, Kakari white Russian emigrants to Yugoslavia, Kakari births. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel.